Tragedy is never seen as good when it happens. Tragedy is always something that in hindsight is actually really good, but you have to recognize the good in it. But for me, it wasn't the worst day. It was a day now that I realized has enabled me to do really amazing things. Because if we all understand that we're coming at life with something that we believe holds us back, no matter how perfect the life looks, everybody's got something, and that's their wheelchair.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators Podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your Keynote Curator. I want to welcome our listeners back. Thanks for tuning in because we have an episode for you that is going to have you put the pedal to the metal and really put some gas on your perspective. We're going to welcome to the podcast Torsten Gross. Torsten, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Seth. I appreciate it.
The reason why I'm making this little bit of wordplay with cars and gas and pedal to the metal is because you are a race car driver among many, many, many things. I want to get right into the heart of the matter here, Torsten. You know, you suffered a terrible injury. I believe it was, from what I understand, diving. You're now in a wheelchair. It's been a long time ago that happened. When it happened, I don't think you said this is the best day of my life, but now looking back from today, I've spoken to you and you said it's the hardest days of your life became one of the best days of your life. Share with our audience a little bit of that perspective, how you got there so that we can learn a little bit about you and a little bit about what you do today.
Sure. Tragedy is never seen as good when it happens. Tragedy is always something that in hindsight is actually really good, but you have to recognize the good in it. Now, I was 15 years old when I broke my neck. I broke my neck by diving into the ocean, broke my neck into 36 pieces, drowning was what they call clinically dead for 2.5 minutes. It never really fazed me that hard because at 15 years old, you're going through multiple different life stages. And the next ones for me were going to be high school, then college, then your first job, and then your marriage. You're always going through process and mental programming changes, right? As you go through these life stages. For me, the wheelchair came along with it. So as I was making the adjustments as a person in a chair versus later on in life when you have a routine, it's harder to change your routine, right? And then get used to something different. So dare I say I was fortunate to have it when I was 15 years old, my accident. But I say it was a good thing because I'm not just a wannabe funny 6'5" dude that is no different than anyone else, but I've got my chair that makes me different. But I want to clarify that a little bit more. It took me a few years and as I was giving these talks to realize, but everybody is different. Even though you've got, two people that look the same, whether they're two white guys, two black, two gay, two disabled, it doesn't matter. Everybody brings something unique and different to the table, even though they don't look like it from the outside. So in the beginning, I thought of it as my weapon, right? My using it for good. And then I realized, well, everyone's got that. So it broadened it and made it even more impactful that we've got it. But for me, it wasn't the worst day. It was a day now that I realized has enabled me to do really amazing things.
Yeah, it's such a powerful context. And I think in previous conversations, I say with respect and courtesy and love in my heart, but you are a person that loves to joke and be whimsical and lighthearted about things. It's not like when it happened and you're 15 and you're not breathing or not alive for 2 minutes. Geez, I can really see if in the big picture that this is going to turn out to be an amazing thing for me. I mean, it was part of a process. But where you've taken it forward, and something that really resonates with me is that you've said, and correct me if the quote is wrong, we all have a version of our own wheelchair.
Indeed.
Talk to us a little bit, expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so I do think that everyone's got a wheelchair. And what I mean by that is whether you have Tourette's, PTSD, you have depression, you lost a child, you had a really bad upbringing, whatever it is, we all have that one thing that we believe holds us back. And I say believe holds us back because if you use it for good, it actually doesn't hold you back. But it's very easy to look at somebody in a wheelchair and go, I understand their struggle, or they have a struggle. I got to tell you, I'd rather be in a wheelchair than have depression. Because depression, if you're having a bad day and you're not being friendly to people, not because you don't want to be, but because that's what your depression does, you can't say over and over again, I'm sorry I'm having a bad day. I have depression. I'm sorry I'm having a bad day. I have depression. I'm sorry I'm having, that's not a thing, right? You can't do that. So therefore, people are judging you, right? If you have Tourette's, most people don't really understand what Tourette's is. Now you're just screaming curses and you're clicking and all that. And people think you're nuts, right? You lost a partner, devastating in your life. No one can see that on you, right? But we all harbor that. And some people actually don't even know what their thing is, what their wheelchair is. And that's okay too.
Right.
But
Yeah.
but that to me is a profound thought because if we all understand that we're coming at life with something that we believe holds us back, no matter how perfect life looks, everybody's got something, and that's their wheelchair.
I have a phrase, it's somehow connected to this. You being the smarter of the two people here, help me land the plane. You never know who you're talking to. One other way of saying it is you don't know what people are going through. But I always say that there's a whole world over there, and sometimes a family looks picture perfect. The photo of the family on the beach or whatever they're doing, the perfect pose, but you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. So even though they're not literally physically in a wheelchair, we all metaphorically have that. And that is a perspective that, you being in a wheelchair, it gives you more runway, if you will, a little bit more room in the pit stop to speak to that powerfully. But
But
I wanted, I wanted,
I'd like to interject though, because
yeah, go ahead.
I think our society has painted disabled people as these destitute humans that can't ever accomplish anything, right? And that we are to be locked up and locked away, and they should feel sorry for me and all that. Like I live an amazing life. I'm so fortunate every day of the woman that I'm married to, the place that I live, the things I get to do. I can't walk up steps. Okay,
Right.
right? That's fine. There's my limitation. Maybe a couple things here and there, but that's my limitation. If you have depression, you can't get up in the morning. That's way worse than what I've got all day
Yeah.
long,
Yeah.
right? So it's funny when I talk to people and they're like, you've been through such a big thing. I'm like, yeah, it was a big day, right? And it was a couple months of rehab getting out of that. Yes. But boy, am I okay with that versus what other people have. So it's not as horrible as people want to believe or the way society paints us.
Totally. And that's the myth that I've heard you talk about that people have about others with disabilities. One thing that I just want to make a footnote here, beautiful home, your words, beautiful wife, beautiful life. But I will say at your home, I think the best life is lived by your dogs that you've rescued. And they're right there front running on that life with you.
He's right here. Yeah, for your listeners. So we only adopt dogs that are 10 years or older. We made an exception on this one. Actually, we were lied to. He was actually 9 when we got him and not 10. But no one wants them.
Hey,
And
you never let a little math get in the way of your life, you
I
know?
don't let a little math get in the way of my life. But it's interestingly enough, people will adopt a 9-year-old dog. They won't adopt a 10-year-old dog, which is kind of why I make the point of that, right? No one wants them, and I got to tell you, they are. We'll only get one at a time because we want to make sure that that one gets the most amount of love possible before we move on to the next one. Because if you get two, one's going to be younger, going to be a little more sprite, going to get a little more attention. So I appreciate you saying that. He's fast asleep over in the corner, and he's our buddy.
Well, if he has to deal with you all day, I'd be taking a nap anytime I could
He,
myself, you know?
I've been called worse, so I'll take that.
Yeah. So, you run marathons, you've done, your rescue scuba diver. And, the thing is, there's a through line here where you've built a career figuring things out as you go. I can relate to that. My wife, I speak several languages and I just kind of learn as I go, cut my teeth and make all the mistakes in the book. But here I am and I'm multilingual and can read and write and go to the theater and do all these things. So I can relate. Talk about the mindset, that takes to, how to do something before setting a goal or taking it on, and connect that, bring us into the world of car racing.
Yeah, so I'll start by saying we do a really horrible job in our society of celebrating failure. I actually at all my talks, one of my first slides is I'm here because I'm a huge failure. And it's like most of the time you really don't hear that of a speaker out of a
Right.
human, right?
They're like, man, I thought this guy was going to inspire us.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's a failure. Okay. And I keep saying I've been fired 4 times. And I say, raise your hand if you've been fired more than 4 times, right? Have you failed at this, that, or the other thing? And it's because I believe failure is super important. If you're not failing, you're not trying. And now there's a lesson to that where fail fast and fail and learn, right? If you fail and then have failure, it means you've stopped. And it means you've allowed the failing to win. I don't. So I get angry just like everybody else if I fail. But I take into consideration the fact that failure is a necessity in what I'm about to go do. Because if I'm not failing, that I haven't figured it out, it's too easy. So for me, if we celebrate failure, let me give you an example. When somebody wins, they tell you how great they were, and they're like, this is wonderful. But when you don't succeed on something, you talk for a half an hour as to why it didn't work and you
Yeah.
give justifications. Why? Why can't we talk about failure and winning in the same breath and take just as much excitement out of both? Do I like to lose? Definitely not. But it is part of our world, our ethos of learning, of growing up, and children do it really well. We as adults do not. So I'm a big proponent of failure, which then brings me to things like car racing and trying. So what I'll do to mitigate trying to a degree is I will have an idea and then I will tell everybody that I'm going to do that idea. And this is to my wife's chagrin. She hates this, right? Because she's like, how are you about to, you just told everybody how, and I'm like, well, 2 things here. One is now I'm held accountable, right? Like I don't want to tell somebody I didn't do it. But 2, it's amazing what happens if you tell people about your plans. They come out of the woodwork. They either want to help you, or I know a guy that does that. Do you need some help? Or they give you support. If you keep everything locked up because you feel like you're scared of giving away a secret or scared of whatever, don't. The opposite and the upside is so much better to that. So I tell everybody what I'm going to do. I don't tell people how I'm going to do it. And there's a reason why. Because I asked to be judged based on the outcome, not how I do it.
Right.
So
Right.
when I became the world's only quadriplegic rescue scuba diver, I went to 6 shops and asked them to be a rescue diver. They all said no. To the 7th one, I put down cash on the table and I said, you've got 2 narratives that can happen right now. One is you stole a kid's money that's in a wheelchair and you didn't do anything for it. The second narrative you could have is you took a kid's money, you allowed him to try, and you still failed him. All I want is a shot. And he went, all right, kid, because I was younger. He was like, all right, kid, we'll give it a shot. You're not going to be able to do it. Right before we get in the pool to start the rescue diving activities, I said, do me a favor. Don't look at how you're going to teach it. Look at what's going to happen at the end. Did I do what you needed me to do? That's what I want to be judged on. And to me, the only way you can be innovative, unique, creative is by doing things in ways that other people have not done before. That's how uniqueness and how innovation happens. So I said, did I do what I did? Did I do it correctly? Well, I did the first exercise on the first try. We came up to the top. I wasn't even smiling. I looked at the guy and I go, this is the second fastest money you'll ever make, right? Fail me on the next one. And I ended up completing my rescue diver. So as long as you tell people, have them come in and help you. As long as you say, don't judge me on how everyone else does it, judge me on the outcome, then creativity gets started, right? Then you can actually become inventive on your journey. Does that make sense?
Completely. But, it's that willingness to Torsten, it really takes intellect. It takes mental energy. It takes effort. It takes thinking to put your mind in a frame where you're like, failure is just another lesson, just like winning can be a lesson. And
It
if you
can.
can,
Yes.
and if you can approach it that way, almost like Mr. Spock, as opposed to Captain Kirk, who's a lot more emotion.
Well,
There's
I will say this, Seth, it comes off a whole lot easier than it sounds. Let me talk about why I do it. I'm scared of everything. People think as
I was going to talk about fear. I was building up to that.
so go ahead. What would your question be then before I give the answer?
No, I was just gonna talk about, I know that fear has played a role in your life and, how connected it is to freedom. And I was gonna kind of tie it into some metaphor around being in the driver's seat and car racing, which has innately, there's some danger there. But I'd rather hear your take on it naturally.
I think I'm scared of everything I do. And when I get behind the wheel of my race car right before a race, I still sit there going, this is stupid. This is not natural. I'm about to go 160 miles an hour, 6 inches away from somebody. No smart people do that. But I've now understood that my fear. I've understood that I'm scared of a lot. But then there are ways of understanding what fear, how fear is defined. Fear of death keeps you safe, right? But fear of failure is what most people have, right? Most activities you do, you don't fail and die. You don't really do that in car racing either, but there are higher consequences inside car racing. But we are scared of things because we're scared. We fear things because we're scared of failing. I've now just come to understand that I'm always going to be scared, and there's a likelihood that I'm going to fail because how many people can actually be number one? Only one,
One.
right? Out of billions
Yeah.
of people, which means that everybody else is going to be number two or after that. So, all right, cool. I've just accepted that failure, that I'm not going to be number one. Okay, but I'm going to try my best to become number one. Luckily, then I've podiumed now and I got first place in my first ever race. I do pretty well, but that's because my expectations are for learning and for failure. I will then amend that and say the second the green flag flies, I'm now shooting for first. There, I'm ultra competitive, but fear is only regulated in the understanding for me that failure is not a bad thing, and that I can only learn. Right, so I'm no longer scared.
Yeah. It's almost like, this it's the simultaneous intention and commitment to win, but at the same time not being trapped by and being over attached to, and constrained by win at all costs, or nothing else matters, because if you don't win, there's learning, as you said, there's
Sure.
real lessons to extract out of that.
Mhm.
So talk to us about your Porsche.
Uh, so I race what's called a GT4 Club Sport MR, which is a factory built
Hey,
Porsche.
hey, hey, this is a kid show, no cursing.
Fair enough. I will not curse anymore. I'll say Mister. No, MR still works. It is a factory built race car. I raced in the International GT League as well as a couple other leagues. And because I don't use my feet, I only use my hands to drive. So my right arm is turned for gas, push for brake. And then my left arm, I hook into the steering wheel, or I have like a tri-pin that allows me to hold it because I don't have good dexterity in my left hand. So it allows me to stay connected to the left wheel, or to the wheel itself, which means I'm only driving a full race car race with one arm, or steering with one arm, and then braking with the other. And why braking isn't something that most people consider as that difficult, and neither did I until it happened to me, is factory built race cars don't have boosted brakes. Every car you've ever driven, unless it's a professionally built race car, gives extra push when you push down on the brake. So it's not that hard. There's a reason why they say standing on your brakes, because you have to use your full body to brake. I only get to use that with my right arm. And so that over the span of a race. So I do get tired, but that's also why I work out a lot, because to be able to do endurance races when I can. So I race with my arms, and I race the GT4 Club Sport MR.
And how often are you out there on the track training?
Yeah.
I have questions about the pit stop. Is it a little bit different for you and your crew than if somebody who wasn't in a wheelchair?
Yeah. So how often am I out there? I'm at the track about 3 days a week, but sometimes four. But I also have a foundation called Just Hands Foundation, which gets people who are in wheelchairs behind the wheel of track cars. And the reason I'll just take a quick interlude to describe that. The reason why it's so fundamentally important and why I started this is because track driving and racing is the only sport on the planet that makes somebody who's in a wheelchair equal to able-bodied people. I will never ski with you in the same division. I'll never do a marathon with you in the same division. I'll never do anything with you in the same division, except for race car driving, because the car doesn't care that I'm in a chair, and you don't know that I'm in a chair unless you saw me in the paddock. So it makes me equal, unless you're Irish and you consider darts a sport. I consider that drinking adjacent, not
Right.
a sport, but we can fight
Right.
about that another time. If anyone's Irish, feel free to come at me. Come at me on Instagram. But it means that track driving is the only thing. The freedom for somebody to chair of that is massive. So we started Just Hands Foundation. So half my time at the track is getting other people into cars, and I coach them. The other half is when I'm out there training. In terms of pit stops, typically the races I do are sprint races, which is under 45 minutes. So we don't need to do tire change or gas or
Okay.
fuel. However, for endurance races, which I've done, which are anywhere between 8 and 24 hours long, and they have you've got a pit crew there. There, you're allowed 4 people over the wall to go do, depending on the league. I'm allowed
Okay.
one extra
Yeah.
person. Now, that person only gets to act as my legs, meaning they will grab me out of the car because I can transfer out of a car. It just takes me a minute. They will pull me out and they will put me on pit wall, like just sitting there. They're not allowed to do anything else. It's as though they are my legs.
Right.
Then the rest of the team does what they need to do.
Gotcha. Yeah, that over the wall and behind the wall. I'm familiar with that. And at the time of this recording, Indy had just run, and I always just keep my eyeballs on the pit and how important they are. But I want to go back to your foundation and the freedom that you mentioned and getting people behind the wheel. Are many of the participants that come, have they driven previously, or is this the first time that they're even actually driving?
So we are not a driving school. We are a performance driving school. So you have to have been driving for a minimum
Okay.
of 3 years with hand controls.
Okay. So you have to come in with some experience then, and that way, you can get them up to speed, if you will.
Think about it this way. You can be 16 to get your license. Most tracks are 18 and over to get on big tracks.
Sure.
Similar
Sure.
concept, right?
Sure. I wanna give our audience just a shout out. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for subscribing and liking us and loving us. But the full picture is you were also chief marketing officer in the corporate world with Deloitte and some other companies, one that you exited out of. Talk to us a little bit about how that plays into what you do today. I know maybe around when this episode of our podcast will be published, it'll be right around the timing of a series that you have that'll be streaming. Talk to us a little bit about how that's all connected.
Yeah. So I started my career, the first 20 some odd years of my life, my working life as a strategist. I was at big companies like BBDO and was the head of strategy at J. Walter Thompson, which no longer exists, but at the time I believe was one of the largest ad agencies in the world. I've done my own thing, and then straddled everything from big and small, digital to traditional to promotional to media. So I've run the gamut, which is kind of nice. And to me, I always joke, when they say, "What's the difference between promotional and digital and traditional?" And I'm like, I'm too stupid to understand how they're different because a consumer is a consumer, and the way they think is the way they think. And they don't go walking down the street going, I really hope this mobile interaction will be the same thing as my retail interaction of the store I'm about to walk into, right? That's
Right.
never, and the whole adage of being online or offline doesn't exist anymore either. We're either alive or we're dead, right? Digital is always part of our
Right.
life. So you
I
can't
think you're living inside my head. You're just saying it better than me. Thank you.
but it's true, and let's be real. And the holding companies are going to hate me for saying this, but the reason why it's happened is because the holding companies can charge clients more margin if they're doing digital strategy, traditional strategy, promotional strategy, brand strategy, and the same thing for producers and creatives and for account people. They get more margin, right? If they can claim that there's a massive difference. In the execution, I think that there is a difference, right? The actual making the website, the actually making of the commercial, the actual making of certain things. But the strategy and the account management of certain things, which is a very large sum of money that the clients are paying, does not need to be stratified the way it is now. Um, Add to that, then I moved to Deloitte Consulting, and I moved there because, and my wife is still there. She's a partner there. She runs the brand practice because consultants understand business. An agency world kind of does, depending on the agency, but still not as good as consultants do. As a strategist, I thought that was incredibly important because we as marketers, there's a reason why in Fortune 1000 the CMO has a 23-month tenure, yet the CFO is a 69-month tenure on average, and the CEO has a 68-month tenure. The reason why is because the chief marketing officer cannot, per quarter, when they're reporting back to the street, show value add, because marketing doesn't work that way. We are marathons. Salespeople are sprints, right? So
Yeah.
they can show what's worked. I got frustrated with that. So I now have become a fractional chief marketing officer where I will go in and I will help companies understand, how are you going to make money? Why is marketing actually appropriate for what you're about to do? And set expectations of return actually means to how you're going to look at return, right? Versus just saying, how much did it sell yesterday? So I did that when this thing, I don't know if you heard about it. It was called COVID, I think. When
Little
COVID
bit.
happened,
It rings a bell.
yeah, it's a conspiracy. I think. I think it was a conspiracy, but not other podcasts that will do. But for your listeners, I'm kidding. Not a
Right.
conspiracy.
He's
Um,
kidding. Wink, wink. No.
yeah, exactly. So the people sorry, when that happened, and we had moved up here in the middle of nowhere, Connecticut, full time, I decided to take a step back and really concentrate on. Well, I actually didn't even know what I wanted to concentrate on, and then things started falling in my lap while I was doing racing, where I got a couple TV commercials for Pennzoil, and I work with Pennzoil now. As of this recording, when it goes live, it'll be public that I am the brand ambassador for Volkswagen, which is why I'm wearing my Volkswagen shirt here today. Things like
Volkswagen.
that. Volkswagen. It's my people. I'm from Germany. It's my first language. It's my first two cars were Volkswagen. So, and I drive an Audi, which is owned by Volkswagen.
Were you recently in New York at a show with them? I believe
I was announced at the and brought to the Javits Center to the auto show with Volkswagen, which was very special. Because I'll tell you one thing: in marketing, people in chairs can be used as quota fillers, right?
Mhm.
The little kid in the wheelchair being pushed by his
Yep.
mom in the back. Pennzoil and Volkswagen, and none of the people that sponsor me or have sponsored me, I'm very clear with that I am a driver or a thing first, and then I'm a person in a wheelchair. They never once exploited me being in a chair. Did they talk about me being in a chair? Absolutely, they did, as they should. It's part of my story. It's part of me. I'm proud of that, right? And I know that sounds weird, but I'm proud of it. But they didn't make it tearjerker that like, oh,
Right.
poor hero,
It
very,
wasn't the protagonist. You're the protagonist, and part
yes,
of the characteristics, the elements of who you are, you know, you're a dog lover, you're this, you're that, and you
yeah.
happen to be in a wheelchair. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I really appreciate that. So when I was with them at the Javits Center at the New York Auto Show, it felt really good, really natural. They were really great with me with Volkswagen, as is Pennzoil, right? It is just who I am, and I think more brands should be that way. I just think people are scared because, just like I said in the beginning, society paints us into a really weird corner that they're scared to say something wrong. And I will say this, I do not change my colloquial terms, right? So if we were to go over there together, I'd say, let's go take a walk over there, right? because walk
Right.
is a colloquial term.
Right.
I don't say let's
Right.
go take a mosey or a stroll. Like who takes a mosey or a stroll? But people have said that in front of me. They've been like, let's go take a walk, a
Right.
mosey. What are we in the 1940s and you're taking a mosey? Right.
Right. Or, before we started recording, I was like, just think of this podcast as a sachet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it should be. Because all I do in my life, Seth, is sachet.
I
Right.
know. I
Like
mean,
we should talk
your
about that.
dog, that's why your dog is resting, because he's just tired of these
Too
constant
much
sachets,
sachet. Can I now promote my sachet podcast because it's very important to me, and I talk about, or I'd like to at some point start a sachet podcast. My point is that I'm getting back to this now, where all this is tied in together because it has allowed me, like we're about to start selling hand controls for sim units that don't exist. We're about to, I'm creating certain things to market with Just Hands, with my foundation, where my marketing chops get to help me in my past. I get to do fractional chief marketing officer work. I get to solve problems and not just be part of the problem, which a lot of times we are inside of the business world, because we're not empowered to say yes. We are only empowered to say no as fear of our job. And that gets back to fear of failure. And failure means you get fired. That's sad.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and you really connected it all, the whole through line, the common thread through the whole thing, because you were dealt a hand, and you've been able to be creative. You've been able to innovate. You've been able to touch into some core virtues, whether it's the adopted dogs, your foundation, rekindling your marketing officer abilities, and pulling it all together. It really is a rich, fortunate life. I just applaud you on how you've been able to navigate it all and create something super unique and super fantastic. Congratulations.
I appreciate that. I do want to, I'm going to say, celebrate and be excited about my failures too. One of the things that I do when I give a presentation, I actually have a failure resume. All the resumes are, my Instagram actually says my life, edited, right? Like that is what you only see my life edited. On my
Right.
resume, you only see my work experience
Yeah.
edited. So I decided I'm going to come up with a failure resume, and I'm going to present that, because y'all have all seen the great stuff, and that's why you're here to see the keynote speaker, because look how successful and blah, 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 right? No, like no one that you're listening to has 100% batting average, even a 50% batting average,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We're lucky if we hit it once or
Yeah.
twice. So I talk about my failure resume, like how many companies I've started and failed. I have like 50 business cards of 50 different businesses that I've tried to start, none of which went anywhere, right? Like that, but that's okay. It's okay. And so I think to address though what happens when people are scared in the corporate world, what they've done is they've tried something and they didn't tell anyone that they were going to do it. And now it looks like they failed and they didn't know what they were going to do. I'd always champion the people that work underneath me. Just let me know what you're going to do. Tell me that there was a fairly good chance that it might fail. And we're going to talk about how you're going to fail, right? Like, let's talk
Yeah.
about that. Versus if you just come to me and go, look, the last 6 months, I got nothing. Okay. Different conversation we're going to have.
Right. That's a different lane for
Totally
sure.
different lane, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is. You do point to something. We've talked about it on this podcast and in some of my writings, where I'm like, people just crop out the sadness, and it's not real. Because
not real.
it's not bottom line real, and I think people realize that. Torsten, I think we could continue to talk forever. This has been a great conversation. I want to pull into the pit stop here, and we can pick it up. Maybe revisit after your series comes out on, it's Amazon, right?
Amazon at the end of July, early August.
Okay. I can't wait to see that. And to our viewers, subscribers, listeners, thanks for being with us. I know you come for amazing conversations and to learn about amazing speakers like Torsten. We're going to put his information in the show notes. and you'll be able to follow him and check out, what he's up to out there in the world, making a difference in people's lives. Torsten, thank you for your generosity, your time, and your good humor. It's really nice to have you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time as well. Thank you so much for having me.
You got it. And to everybody else, we'll see you next time.